The wine glass slipped from my fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. Red liquid splashed across our cream-colored rug, the one Amanda had specially ordered from Italy for our 10th anniversary. The same Amanda who sat across from me, calm and collected, as if she hadn't just suggested destroying everything we'd built together. An open marriage? My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. After 15 years, you're telling me you want to see other people? Amanda's perfectly manicured fingers traced the rim of her wine glass. She hadn't flinched at the crash, hadn't moved to clean up the mess. That wasn't like her at all. The Amanda I knew would have already grabbed paper towels and club soda, muttering about stains and ruined furniture. "Brian, you're not listening to me," she said, her voice steady and rehearsed. "I'm talking about growth, about expanding our horizons. Don't you feel like we've become stagnant?" Stagnant. The word hit me like a physical blow. I looked around our dining room, the built-in shelves I'd installed myself, the family photos from our vacation in Cape Cod last summer, Emily's artwork proudly displayed on the walls. Our 14-year-old daughter had inherited her mother's artistic talent. Nothing about this felt stagnant to me. "Where is this coming from?" I managed to ask, my throat tight. Is there someone else?" Amanda's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "This isn't about anyone else, Brian. It's about us. About being honest with each other about our needs and desires. We're not 25 anymore. People evolve." I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Evolve? Is that what you call it?" The anger rising in my chest surprised me. "We have a teenage daughter upstairs. We have a mortgage, shared accounts, a life we built together. And you want to what? Date other people? Sleep around?" "Keep your voice down," Amanda hissed, glancing toward the stairs. "Emily doesn't need to hear this." "Oh, now you're concerned about Emily." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "How do you think she'll feel about her parents having an open marriage?" "This doesn't have to affect her at all," Amanda said, standing up as well. She moved closer, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "Brian, please. This could make us stronger. Other couples do it successfully all the time. We'd still be committed to each other, to our family. We'd just have more freedom to explore." The way she said it, so reasonable, so logical, made me feel like I was losing my mind. Was I the crazy one for thinking marriage meant exclusivity? For believing that the vows we'd taken actually meant something? "Who is it?" I asked again, more firmly this time. "There's no one," she insisted, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. Amanda had always been a terrible liar. It was one of the things I'd loved about her, her transparency, her honesty. When had that changed? "Don't lie to me." My voice cracked. "Please, at least give me that much respect." She turned away, walking to the window. Outside, our neighbor Greg's lights were still on, his truck parked in the driveway. Had been doing some renovations for us over the past few months, a new deck, some updates to the master bathroom. Always showing up when I was at work, always finding reasons to stay late. The realization hit me like ice water in my veins. "Greg?" I whispered. "Our neighbor Greg." Amanda's shoulders tensed, just slightly, but it was enough. 15 years of marriage had taught me to read her body language better than any words. "It's not what you think," she said quickly, turning back to face me. "Nothing's happened. We've talked. He understands things about me, about what I want from life. He's been through this himself." "Been through what? Destroying his marriage?" The pieces were falling into place now. Greg's mysterious past, his careful avoidance of talking about his ex-wife. Is that why his wife left him? Because he suggested an open marriage too? "You're oversimplifying everything," Amanda said, her calm facade finally cracking. "This isn't about Greg. This is about us, about being honest with each other. I'm trying to do the right thing here, Brian. I could have just..." She stopped abruptly, but I heard the unspoken words, "I could have just cheated." The implication that she was somehow noble for asking permission first made me feel physically ill. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "What?" How long have you been talking to him about this? Planning this? Amanda's silence was deafening. Dad. Emily's voice from the top of the stairs made us both freeze. Is everything okay? I heard something break. I looked at the shattered wine glass, the spreading stain on the rug. Such a perfect metaphor for what was happening to my marriage, something precious, irreparably broken. Everything's fine, honey, Amanda called up, her voice steady again. Always the perfect mother, always in control. Your father just had a little accident. Go back to bed. I heard Emily's door close and turned back to my wife. I need some air, I said, grabbing my keys from the hook by the door. Brian, wait. We need to talk about this. Talk about what? I asked, my hand on the doorknob. About how you've already decided to end our marriage. About how you're trying to manipulate me into giving you permission to sleep with our neighbor. What exactly is there to talk about? You're being dramatic, she said, but her voice wavered. This doesn't have to be the end. It could be a new beginning. I opened the door, pausing in the threshold. A new beginning, I repeated. Is that what Greg called it when he left his wife? The look on Amanda's face told me everything I needed to know. I stepped out into the night air, closing the door behind me. In my pocket, my phone buzzed with a text. Probably Amanda, already trying to damage control the situation. But as I pulled it out, I saw it was from a different number, one I didn't recognize. You deserve to know the truth, the message read. I'm Greg's ex-wife. We need to talk. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, staring at the text message. The screen had long since gone dark, but the words were burned into my mind, I'm Greg's ex-wife. We need to talk. My thumb hovered over the reply button, trembling slightly. What could she possibly tell me that I didn't already suspect? The first drops of rain began to hit my windshield, matching the storm brewing inside my head. Through the rearview mirror, I could see our bedroom light was still on. Amanda was probably up there, waiting for me to come back, ready with more carefully crafted arguments about growth and evolution. The thought made my stomach turn. I started typing, when and where. The response came almost immediately, Sunrise Diner. 30 minutes. I'm already here. It was nearly 11 p.m. What kind of person sits in a diner this late, waiting to drop bombshells on strangers? Then again, what kind of person suggests an open marriage after 15 years, 2 months of secret conversations with the neighbor? The rain was picking up now, drumming against the car roof like angry fingers. I should go back inside. I should confront Amanda, demand the whole truth, try to salvage what was left of our marriage. That's what a rational person would do. Instead, I started the engine. The Sunrise Diner was a 24-hour joint on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where third-shift workers grabbed coffee and truckers stopped for midnight breakfast. As I pulled into the nearly empty parking lot, I spotted only 2 other cars, a beat-up Honda Civic and Greg's familiar red truck. My heart stopped. Was this a setup? But as I watched, I saw a woman sitting alone in a booth by the window, nursing what looked like coffee. She was maybe mid-40s, with shoulder-length dark hair and the kind of tired eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and too many disappointments. When she saw my car, she sat up straighter, her gaze fixed on me through the rain-streaked glass. This had to be her, Greg's ex-wife. The woman who'd walked the path I was now facing. I killed the engine but didn't get out immediately. My phone had buzzed 3 times during the drive, all messages from Amanda. Please come home so we can talk about this properly. You're overreacting. This isn't what you think. At least let me know you're safe. I ignored them all and stepped out into the rain. The bell above the diner door chimed as I entered, its cheerful tone jarring against my mood. The woman in the booth raised her coffee cup slightly in acknowledgement. As I slid into the seat across from her, I noticed her hands were shaking slightly. You must be Brian, she said, her voice lower and rougher than I'd expected. I'm Catherine. Though I suppose you know me as Greg's ex-wife, if he's mentioned me at all. He hasn't, I admitted. Not really. Just that things ended badly. Catherine let out a bitter laugh. Badly. That's one way to put it. She pushed her coffee cup aside and leaned forward. Let me guess, your wife recently suggested opening up your marriage? Talked about growth, freedom, evolving as a couple. The accuracy of her words sent a chill down my spine. How did you? Because that's his playbook, she cut in. Greg doesn't go after single women. Too messy, too many expectations. He likes married ones, specifically, he likes turning stable marriages into open ones. It's like a game to him. A game. My mouth went dry. Catherine nodded, pulling out her phone. In the past 5 years, he's done this in 3 different towns. I've been tracking him, gathering evidence. Not for revenge, well, not just for revenge. To warn people like you, before it's too late. She slid the phone across the table. On the screen was a social media post from 2 years ago, Greg with his arm around a smiling blonde woman. The caption read, "Sometimes the heart wants what it wants. Thanks to Sarah and Tom for being so open-minded and understanding. #modernlove #open-marriage." My hands clenched into fists under the table. There are more. Oh, there are more, Catherine said, taking her phone back and scrolling. The pattern's always the same. He moves to a new town, establishes himself as the friendly neighborhood contractor, finds a couple that seems solid but maybe a little comfortable. Then he starts working on the wife. Subtle at first, long conversations while the husband's at work, sharing his own journey of self-discovery. By the time he suggests opening the marriage, he's already got her convinced it's her idea. A waitress appeared at our table, coffee pot in hand. Catherine nodded for a refill, but I waved her off. My stomach was churning too much for coffee. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked once the waitress had moved away. "Why now?" Catherine's expression softened slightly. "Because 2 years ago, when this was happening to me, I wished someone had warned me. By the time I figured out what was really going on, Greg had already drained our joint accounts and moved on to his next target. He's not just a homewrecker, Brian. He's a predator." "But Amanda..." I started, then stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. "But Amanda is smarter than that. But Amanda loves me. But Amanda wouldn't fall for something so obvious. Your wife isn't the first intelligent, loving woman he's manipulated," Catherine said, as if reading my thoughts. "That's what makes him so dangerous. He doesn't go after unhappy marriages, they're too easy to spot, too likely to fall apart on their own. He looks for the good ones, the ones that just need a little push to crumble." I thought about Amanda's behavior over the past few months. The subtle changes in her routine, the late-night phone checks, the way she had started dressing differently for errands. All the signs I'd ignored because I trusted her completely. "How far do you think?" I couldn't finish the question. Catherine's silence was answer enough. "I have proof," she said finally, pulling an envelope from her purse. "Photos, text messages, bank statements. Everything I've gathered on Greg's pattern. Including some things about your wife that you probably don't want to see, but need to." My hand trembled as I reached for the envelope. "Why didn't you go to the police?" "With what evidence?" "He's careful. Everything he does is technically legal, he just happens to always walk away with a significant loan or investment from the wives he targets. And by the time anyone realizes what's happened, he's already gone." The envelope felt heavy in my hands, like it contained more than just paper. It held the potential end of my marriage, the shattering of my family, the destruction of everything I thought I knew about my life. "There's something else you should know," Catherine said, her voice dropping even lower. "Something about Emily." My head snapped up at my daughter's name. "What about Emily?" Catherine glanced around the nearly empty diner, then pulled another document from her purse. "When was the last time you had any genetic testing done?" "For health reasons, maybe." The way she asked the question made my blood run cold. "What are you saying?" "I think you know what I'm saying, Brian. Greg's been in your town for almost 15 years, hasn't he? And Emily is 14. The room started spinning. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the parking lot where Greg's truck sat like a malevolent sentinel. In that brief flash of light, I could have sworn I saw a figure watching us from inside it. My phone buzzed again, another message from Amanda. "Where are you? We need to talk. There's something I have to tell you." The envelope from Catherine felt like it was burning a hole in my jacket as I drove home through the storm. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had turned white. Emily. My Emily. Could it be possible? 14 years of memories flashed through my mind, her first steps, her first word, Dada, the way she'd always wanted me to check under her bed for monsters, how she'd inherited my terrible singing voice. Or had she? Had I just convinced myself of these similarities because I wanted them to be true? Lightning cracked across the sky again, illuminating the empty streets. It was well past midnight now. Amanda had stopped texting after that last message. "There's something I have to tell you." The silence felt more ominous than any words could have been. As I turned onto our street, I saw Greg's house was dark now. His truck wasn't in the driveway anymore, of course not, I'd just seen it at the diner. Had he been watching us? Warning Amanda even now about what Catherine had told me. I pulled into our driveway and just sat there, rain drumming on the roof of my car. The master bedroom light was still on, a beacon in the darkness. Waiting for me. Waiting for this confrontation that would either save or destroy what remained of our family. My phone buzzed one more time. Catherine, remember, hell have already coached her on what to say. Don't let them gaslight you. The proof is in those documents. I hadn't even opened the envelope yet. Part of me wanted to throw it away, to go inside and pretend this night had never happened. To accept Amanda's suggestion of an open marriage if it meant keeping my family intact. But Catherine's words echoed in my head, he's not just a homewrecker. He's a predator. The garage door opened automatically as I approached. Amanda must have heard me pull up. No more delaying the inevitable. I walked into our home, the home we'd built together, knowing it would never feel the same after tonight. Amanda was waiting in the kitchen, still wearing the same outfit from dinner, though her perfectly styled hair had started to come undone. She'd been crying, I could tell from the slight smudge in her mascara, something she'd normally never allow. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been worried sick." "Have you?" I placed the envelope on the kitchen island between us. "Or were you worried about what I might be finding out?" Her eyes fixed on the envelope. "What is that?" "Insurance documents," I said, watching her reaction carefully. "Medical records. DNA tests. Ring any bells?" The color drained from her face. For a moment, she swayed slightly, grabbing the counter for support. "Brian, I can explain." "How long have you known?" My voice came out calmer than I felt. "About Emily. About Greg." "How long have you been lying to me?" "It's not what you think," she started, but I cut her off. "Don't." The word came out sharp enough to make her flinch. "Don't tell me what I think. Tell me the truth. For once in our marriage, just tell me the truth." Amanda sank into one of the kitchen chairs, her composure finally cracking. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she whispered. "Greg and I, it was before we were married. Just a few times. When he moved away, I thought that was the end of it. I didn't even know I was pregnant until... Until when?" I prompted when she fell silent. "Until 2 weeks after our wedding." She wouldn't meet my eyes. "By then, we were so happy. You were so excited about starting a family. I convinced myself it didn't matter, that you were Emily's father in every way that counted." "And Greg? Did he know?" Amanda nodded slowly. "He figured it out when he moved back to town. Saw her at the grocery store one day. Said she looks just like his mother." The room started spinning. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. "So when he offered to do our renovations, he said he wouldn't tell you," Amanda's voice cracked. "Said he just wanted to be part of her life, even if from a distance." I believed him. I thought he understood. Understood what? That you'd built our entire marriage on a lie. The anger I'd been suppressing finally broke through. That you'd let me raise another man's child without ever telling me the truth. She's your daughter." Amanda stood up suddenly, tears streaming down her face. "You raised her. You loved her. Biology doesn't change that." "No," I agreed, my voice deadly quiet. "But lies do. 15 years of lies. Dad. We both froze. Emily stood in the doorway, wearing her favorite pajamas, the ones with the constellations ID taught her to recognize during our backyard camping nights. Her long dark hair was messy from sleep, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Why are you guys fighting? She asked, looking between us. What lies? What's going on? Amanda moved toward her, arms outstretched. Nothing, sweetie. Everything's fine. Your father and I are just. Don't, I cut in. Don't lie to her. She deserves better than that. Emily took a step back, wrapping her arms around herself. Mom. What's Dad talking about? The front door opened before either of us could respond. Greg stood there, soaked from the rain, his expression unreadable. I think it's time we all had a talk, he said. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. In that moment, looking between my wife, my daughter, and the men who had destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life, I made a decision that would change all our lives forever. Emily, I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could, go pack a bag. You're coming with me tonight. She's not going anywhere. Greg stepped forward, his mask of friendliness finally dropping. She's my daughter, Anne. I don't remember moving. One moment I was by the counter, the next my fist connected with Greg's jaw, sending him stumbling backward onto our front porch. Thunder crashed overhead as rain poured in through the open door. Brian, stop. Amanda screamed, but it was Emily's sob that froze me in place. You're not my dad. She whispered, her voice small and broken. Is that what this is about? The look of betrayal in her eyes, my daughter's eyes, biology be damned, would haunt me for years to come. But before any of us could respond, another figure appeared in the doorway behind Greg. Actually, Catherine said, holding up her phone, there's something all of you need to see. Especially you, Emily. The rain poured in through the open door as Catherine stepped into our foyer, water dripping from her coat onto the hardwood floors. Greg was still sprawled on the porch, holding his jaw where ID hit him, but his eyes were fixed on his ex-wife with an expression ID never seen before, fear. Catherine, he said, scrambling to his feet. This doesn't concern you. Doesn't it? She held up her phone again, screen glowing in the dim light. Emily, sweetheart, how much has your mother told you about your father? Your real father? Emily stood frozen between Amanda and me, tears streaming down her face. I don't understand, she whispered. What's happening? Amanda moved to stand between Catherine and our daughter. This isn't the time, she hissed. She's just a child. She's 14, Catherine replied calmly. The same age I was when Greg first came into my life. The same age Sarah's daughter was, and Jessica's. Haven't you noticed the pattern yet, Amanda? My blood ran cold. What pattern? Catherine's eyes never left Greg as she spoke. Why don't you tell them? Tell them about all the other families you've destroyed. All the other teenage daughters you've tried to get to know after revealing yourself as their biological father. Greg's face twisted into something ugly. You're crazy. You've been stalking me, making up lies. DNA doesn't lie, Catherine cut him off, finally looking at Amanda. Did you ever wonder why he really left his previous towns? Why he always seems to target families with teenage daughters? Why he insisted on doing renovations that gave him access to Emily's bedroom? The implication hit me like a physical blow. I looked at Emily's bedroom window, remembering how Greg had suggested adding a window seat during the renovations. How had insisted on doing the work himself, often when no one else was home. You son of a, I lunged for him again, but Amanda grabbed my arm. Stop. Emily screamed, her voice cracking. Everyone just stop. I want to know what's on the phone. I deserve to know the truth. The room fell silent except for the sound of rain and distant thunder. Catherine nodded slowly and held out her phone to Emily. These are police reports from 3 different states. Missing persons reports that were later withdrawn. And DNA tests, lots of them. Your mother's not the first woman Greg convinced had fathered her child. Amanda snatched the phone before Emily could take it, her hands shaking as she scrolled through whatever was on the screen. I watched as all the color drained from her face. This can't be real, she whispered. The dates, the tests. Oh, they're real, Catherine said. I've spent years gathering evidence. Greg's not just a homewrecker, he's something much worse. He uses these revelations about being the biological father to get close to teenage girls. But here's the thing, Amanda, according to these DNA tests, he's not Emily's father either. The world seemed to stop. What? Amanda's voice was barely audible. Catherine took her phone back and pulled up another document. I had access to Greg's medical records from our marriage. He's been sterile since a childhood illness. He couldn't have fathered Emily, or any of the other girls he's claimed were his. It's all been a manipulation, a way to get access to vulnerable families. Greg moved faster than any of us expected. He shoved past Amanda and grabbed the phone from Catherine's hands, throwing it against the wall where it shattered. You're lying. He shouted, his carefully maintained facade finally cracking completely. I've worked too hard, planned too carefully. Planning like this. Another voice came from the doorway. A police detective stepped into view, holding up a recorder. Behind her, red and blue lights suddenly illuminated our front yard. We've got everything we need, Mr. Stevens. Including your confession. Everything happened in a blur after that. Police officers swarmed into our house. Greg was handcuffed and led away, shouting threats and denials. Catherine spoke quietly with the detective, providing more evidence from what looked like a thick file. But I couldn't focus on any of that. My attention was fixed on Emily, who stood in the middle of our kitchen looking lost and small in her constellation pajamas. Dad. She said quietly, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. Are you still my dad? I dropped to my knees in front of her, pulling her into a tight hug. Always, I whispered fiercely. No matter what any test says, I will always be your father. Over Emily's shoulder, I saw Amanda sink into a chair, her face in her hands. The betrayal was still there, 15 years of lies didn't disappear with Greg's arrest. But as I held my daughter, I realized something important, the truth about her paternity didn't matter as much as I'd thought. What mattered was protecting her from the real monster who'd tried to use that lie to hurt her. Mr. Henderson. The detective approached us gently. We're going to need statements from all of you. But first, there's something else you should know. The DNA tests we found in Greg's possession, they weren't all fake. I felt Emily stiffen in my arms as the detective continued. According to the real tests we've uncovered, Emily's biological father was a sperm donor. It seems Mr. Stevens accessed private medical records to identify families who'd used fertility clinics, then used that information to manipulate them. Amanda's head snapped up. What did you say? The detective handed her a document. Does the name Dr. James Mitchell mean anything to you? I watched as recognition dawned on Amanda's face, followed by a flood of tears. The fertility specialist we saw before our wedding, she whispered. When we were having trouble conceiving. I never told you, Brian, but I went back to him after you had that motorcycle accident. The doctor said the trauma might have affected your fertility, and I was so afraid of disappointing you. The next few weeks passed in a blur of police statements, counseling sessions, and sleepless nights. The Italian rug in our dining room still bore the red wine stain from that first night, a permanent reminder of how quickly a life can unravel. I'd thought about replacing it, but somehow it felt right to keep it. Some stains aren't meant to be erased, only lived with. Emily had chosen to stay with me in the house while Amanda moved in with her sister temporarily. I need space to think, Shed said, and for once, she was being completely honest. Our daughter split her time between us, showing a maturity that broke my heart. No 14-year-old should have to navigate their parents' trauma with such grace. The investigation into Greg revealed a pattern that spanned more than a decade. Catherine's evidence, combined with the detective's work, had uncovered similar scenarios in 5 different states. Always the same approach: identify families who'd used fertility clinics, manipulate medical records to create false paternity claims, then use those claims to gain access to teenage girls. The fact that had failed with Emily was small comfort given how close had come. I was sitting in my home office, reviewing emails from our family therapist, when I heard the front door open. Emily wasn't due back from Amanda's for another day, and I tensed automatically, a new habit since everything happened. But it was Amanda's voice that called out. Brian. Can we talk? I found her in the dining room, standing next to that stained rug, holding a thick manila envelope. She looked different, tired, but somehow more real than she had in years. The perfectly styled hair and designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple ponytail and jeans. "I went to see Dr. Mitchell," she said without preamble. I needed to understand everything. I gestured to the dining room table, the same one where she had suggested opening our marriage what felt like a lifetime ago. We sat across from each other, the envelope between us like a bridge or a barrier, I wasn't sure which. "He remembered us," Amanda continued, her voice soft. "He had records from all our visits. After your accident, the doctors said the trauma might have affected your fertility. You were in so much pain, dealing with physical therapy, and I couldn't bear to add to your burden. So I went back to the clinic alone." She opened the envelope, spreading out medical records and dated forms. "I used your sperm from our previous attempts. Dr. Mitchell said it was still viable. I told myself I wasn't really lying, Emily was still our baby, created from both of us. I just helped it along without telling you." My hands shook as I looked at the documents. Dates, medical terms, consent forms, all confirming what the detective had said. Emily was biologically mine after all. The truth Greg had used to manipulate our family had been a lie from the start. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I asked, my voice rough. "All these years, why keep it a secret?" Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "At first, I was afraid you'd be angry that ID made such a huge decision without you. Then, as time passed, it seemed easier to just not say anything. We were happy. Emily was perfect. I convinced myself the truth would only hurt you. And Greg? When he moved back and started claiming he was Emily's father." She wiped her eyes. "He found out about our fertility treatment somehow, probably hacked the clinic's records. He approached me one day when I was alone, said he knew our secret. I was so terrified of you finding out about the clinic that I let him manipulate me. When he suggested opening our marriage, I thought if I agreed, he'd keep quiet. I never actually." "Did you sleep with him?" The question I'd been afraid to ask for weeks finally came out. "No," she said firmly, meeting my eyes. "I thought about it, not because I wanted him, but because I was scared of what he'd do if I didn't. But I couldn't go through with it. That's why I suggested the open marriage that night. I thought if you agreed, I could pretend to go along with Greg's plans while finding a way out. It was cowardly, I know." I stood up abruptly, needing to move. The room felt too small, too full of memories both real and false. Through the window, I could see Greg's empty house. It would be sold soon, according to Catherine, who'd become an unexpected ally in all this. She was working with the police to identify and contact other families Greg had targeted. "Do you know what hurts the most?" I said finally, still looking out the window. "Not the fertility treatments, I would have understood that. Not even keeping it secret all these years. It's that when everything started falling apart, you tried to manipulate me instead of trusting me with the truth." "I know," Amanda whispered. "I've been seeing a therapist too. Trying to understand why I make the choices I make. Why I've spent so much of our marriage hiding things instead of being honest. I want to be better, Brian. For Emily. For you, if you'll let me. For myself." I turned back to face her. "And if I can't get past this? If the trust is too broken? Then we'll figure out how to be good parents to Emily separately," she said, and I could hear the pain and resignation in her voice. "But I'm hoping we can try to rebuild. Not just go back to how things were, that wasn't as perfect as I pretended it was. But maybe we can build something new. Something honest." Before I could respond, we heard the front door open again. Emily walked in, stopping short when she saw us both in the dining room. "I thought I wasn't supposed to come home until tomorrow," she said, looking between us uncertainly. "Your timing is perfect," I said, pulling out a chair for her. "Your mom and I were just talking about the future. About truth and trust and family. I think it's time we all had an honest conversation." Emily sat down slowly, her hand automatically going to the constellation necklace I'd given her for her 13th birthday. "Does this mean, are you getting divorced?" Amanda and I looked at each other across the table. In that moment, I saw all our years together, the joy and love, the secrets and lies, the potential for something new if we were brave enough to try. "We don't know yet, sweetheart," I said finally. "But whatever happens, we're going to face it together, with complete honesty from now on. No more secrets. No more lies. Just truth, even when it's hard. Even when it's ugly," Amanda added softly. Emily nodded, reaching out to take both our hands. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across that wine-stained rug. Outside, a moving truck pulled up to Greg's house, the first step in erasing his presence from our street, if not from our memories. "I have something to tell you too," Emily said suddenly. "The therapist said I should be honest about my feelings." Emily's hands tightened around ours, her knuckles turning white. In that moment, she looked so young and vulnerable, yet her eyes held a wisdom beyond her years. "I knew something was wrong," she said quietly. "Before all this happened. I heard Greg talking on the phone one night when I was supposed to be at soccer practice. Practice had been cancelled, but instead of coming home, I sat on the back porch and I heard things." Amanda tensed beside me. "What kinds of things, honey?" "He was talking about Mom, about our family. About other families too. He said something about everything going according to plan and another perfect setup. It didn't make sense then, but..." She took a shaky breath. "I started avoiding him after that. Making sure I was never alone in the house when he was working. I should have told someone." "This isn't your fault," I said firmly, squeezing her hand. "None of this is your fault. You're the child, it was our job to protect you, and we failed." "But that's just it," Emily continued, her voice stronger now. "You didn't fail. You're my parents. Both of you. Even when everything was falling apart, even when you were fighting and hurt and angry, you both still tried to protect me. That's what real parents do, right?" Amanda started crying softly. I felt my own eyes burning. "There's more," Emily said. "When Catherine showed up that night, when everything came out about Greg, I was relieved. Not just because he was arrested, but because..." She looked at me. "Because it meant you were really my dad. My biological dad. But you know what? Even before we knew that, even when everyone thought Greg might be my father, you never treated me differently. You never stopped being my dad." "I never could," I whispered. "That's why I've been seeing Dr. Torres, the therapist, twice a week instead of just once," Emily continued. "Because I needed to figure something out. About family and trust and forgiveness." She turned to Amanda. "Mom, what you did, keeping secrets, letting Greg manipulate you, it hurt us. It hurt Dad, and it hurt me. We need to talk about that, really talk about it." "But..." She squeezed Amanda's hand. "But you're still my mom. And I've seen how hard you're trying to make things right." Then she looked at me. "Dad, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But I've also seen you at Dr. Torres' office, working on your own stuff. Trying to understand and heal instead of just being angry. That's brave. When did our daughter become so wise?" I wondered, watching her face in the fading sunlight. "So here's what I want to say," Emily took a deep breath. "I want us to try. All of us. Not to go back to how things were, because Mom's right, it wasn't perfect even before Greg. But to build something new. Something honest." Amanda wiped her eyes. "Sweetheart, it's not that simple. Your father and I." "I know it's not simple," Emily cut in. "Dr. Torres says healing takes time. Trust has to be rebuilt. But can we at least try? Can we promise to be honest with each other, even when it's hard? Even when we're scared?" I looked at Amanda across the table. The woman I'd married 15 years ago was gone, replaced by someone more real, more flawed, but perhaps more capable of genuine connection. The perfect facade had cracked, revealing something raw and uncertain underneath. "I can promise honesty," I said slowly. "I can promise to try. But it has to be day by day. No grand promises about the future, no pressure to fix everything at once." Amanda nodded. "I can do that. Day by day. Complete honesty. Even about the small things, Emily insisted. Like, I actually hate those constellation pajamas. I only wear them because you both gave them to me for Christmas and I didn't want to hurt your feelings. The absurdity of this confession in the middle of our serious family discussion startled a laugh out of me. Soon, all three of us were laughing, the sound echoing off the walls of our dining room. It wasn't perfect, wasn't a magical solution to all our problems, but it was real. A knock at the door interrupted our moment. Catherine stood there, looking apologetic. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but I thought you should know. Greg took a plea deal. He'll be in prison for a long time, and more families are coming forward. You won't have to testify. Relief flooded through me. Emily wouldn't have to face him in court, wouldn't have to relive the fear and manipulation. Thank you, Amanda said softly. For everything. For stopping him before. She couldn't finish the sentence. Catherine nodded. Just, be good to each other. That's the best revenge against people like Greg, not letting them destroy what's real and good in our lives. After she left, the three of us sat in silence for a moment. The sun had set completely now, but none of us moved to turn on the lights. In the dimness, I could see the outline of that wine stain on the rug, now more of a shadow than a mark. Day by day, Emily said finally, squeezing our hands one last time before standing up. I'm going to go change out of these constellation pajamas. As she headed upstairs, Amanda looked at me in the growing darkness. I know we have a long way to go, she said. I know trust is earned, not given. But I'm willing to do the work if you are. I thought about all we'd been through, all the lies and pain, but also all the love and history between us. I thought about Emily's wisdom and courage, about second chances and hard truths. Day by day, I agreed quietly. With honesty. Amanda nodded, standing slowly. I should go back to Sarah's. Stay, I found myself saying. Not in our room. The guest room. But stay. For Emily. For us. Day by day, remember. A small smile touched her lips, not the perfect, practiced smile I'd grown used to, but something more genuine. Day by day, she agreed. Outside, the last moving truck pulled away from Greg's empty house. Inside, Emily came back downstairs in different pajamas, carrying a board game. Family night? She asked hopefully. With total honesty about who's cheating at Monopoly. And so we began, not with grand gestures or perfect solutions, but with small truths, shared laughter, and the courage to face each day as it came. The wine stain remained on our rug, a reminder not of what we'd lost, but of what we were building, something real, something honest, something stronger than the perfect lie we'd lived before.